GOP studio. I'm Vlad Davidiuk. I work for the Harris County GOP as the Director of Communications here. And I'm joined in the studio today by Justin Lurie. He's a candidate for the Republican nomination for Congressional District 2 in the upcoming primary, which will be held on March 6th. Justin, welcome to HCRP.
Well, hello, Vlad. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I think we're going to have a fun afternoon.
I agree. I could not have put it better myself, to be honest. You're in a very interesting race. It's a very wide, deep field. You've got a lot of candidates in there.
Everybody's fantastic.
And a lot of different levels of experience, different backgrounds, different approaches on a lot of attempts to solve the problems. But part of the problem of being in a political party, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, is more often than not, you're going to arrive at somewhat the same answers, about 90%, 80% of the same answers as everyone else. And so this is one of those opportunities to kind of distinguish yourself. First and foremost, what brought you into this race?
Well, Vlad, it's easy. Have you ever sat at home and you watch the news and you're frustrated? Yes. Right? Everyone is.
Absolutely.
Everyone watches what happens in Washington, and it's real easy. Do you want to be someone who sits on the couch and complains, or do you want to be the person who says, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to get things done. I'm going to fix it. And that's what the big motivation was. I want to be a doer, not a talker.
Okay.
I have a vision. That's what it is. It's about executing a vision. But you made a good point, and you said, your answers are similar. You all have same ideas. You come back to the same conclusion. But I think it's deeper than that. Just because you have a good idea doesn't mean you can sell the idea, whether it's here to your constituents, here to your party, or most of all, can you build influence in Washington? Can you get anything done in Washington? And if you can't have that ability to build the relationships, the ability to sell your idea, the ability to have the vision, it's never going to happen. Thousands of bills get brought up every year in Washington. Only a few hundred are actually voted on. Do you want your bill, the one to represent your people? Is it in the trash heap of bills, or is it the bill that gets voted on and approved? Only a small minority can get it done, and that's why we need to be careful. We need to be picky about who is that actual person who's going to represent the district here.
So why Justin Lurie? What makes Justin Lurie unique when it comes to being the person who can push that bill across that threshold?
Well, it's so easy to say, this is what I've done, this is who I am. Everyone in this race has that track record.
What have you done?
Everyone, okay, well, I've created my own investment bank. We do mergers and acquisitions. I close deals. That is the role, that is the actual job of what we do. We sit across the table, just like this. We have to negotiate. We have to find that commonality. We have to find that win-win solution, but yet still staying true to who we are. And if we can't do that, the deal doesn't get done. I've also started a clothing company. I created it. I sold it. Successful company. I sit on the board of the American Petroleum Institute, the API here in Houston. I am the oil and gas candidate for Congress here in Texas. Very much here in Houston. But let's go back to your question. It's boring to talk about who am I. Everybody's a shark. I have a great resume. Yada, yada, yada. But it's more than that. We have to elect a candidate who goes out there. We have so many debates. We've had so many opportunities for people to say, who do I believe in? They're all on tape. They're all on YouTube. They're all on Facebook. Someone could watch it.
We did one here.
We did a giant one in this room. Thousands of people watched it. The real question is, who showed up? The question is, who didn't show up? And of those people who did show up, who do you believe in? Who can sell the idea? Who can sell the vision? Who can get things done?
Let me ask you this. You presented yourself as a candidate who has this particular niche of experience. What made Justin Lurie who he is? What got you to that point? What's the motivating factor? Where in your point of your life did you say, you know what, I want to achieve these goals? What formed you?
I have no idea. I had to really think about it. It's
I mean, your parents, your background, you went to school.
Yeah. Well,
what were you interested in? What's that foundation for you?
Sure. I like to talk about this. My family and I, we didn't grow up in Texas. My son is born in Texas. He's born in Kingwood. But
Good.
My wife and I, and he's right over here making noise in the corner. But my wife and I, we grew up north.
Okay.
And we're Texans by choice.
Bravo.
And we mean that with every bit of our heart. We didn't move here because of a job transfer. We didn't move here because of a help wanted we saw. We moved here because we believe in Texas values.
Right.
And we believe in the Texas way. And we said, we are going to move to Houston, and then we're going to make it happen. And that's exactly what happened. But I lived all around the world. I grew up north. I went to school in London. I used to live in Australia for a couple of years. Graduated from Michigan, up in the Midwest. I know that feeling. I do it all day long, too. But I have that sense of, I want to make a difference.
Right.
I want to see everybody be successful. And I have the vision of how to make that happen. Government doesn't create prosperity. We've had those years and years of Obama trying to push that top-down approach, but it doesn't work that way. We all know it. Everyone watching this interview will know that too. Government can create the environment where people can be successful. And that's what I want to do. I want to push that business-first agenda.
What are the three biggest challenges that you want to tackle? I mean, if you were to get through the primary and get through November and get sworn in as the next congressman for CD2, what are the three biggest challenges you want to tackle immediately?
Well, first, since we have, how many months? 8 months to the general?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Now I'm coughing down too. Now it's contagious. I am hoping, now that our party controls all three areas, right? The House, the Senate, the presidency. I am hoping that we can eliminate that 60-vote rule, go right to the majority vote wins in the Senate, and we can actually pass immigration. Okay. And we can secure the border, whatever means that means, whether it's fencing, a wall, or drones, whatever that makes sense. We can end the chain migration, and we can institute a very common sense merit-based system. Now, I'm hoping this gets solved between now and all the way to that, because the winner of this race doesn't start work until early January.
Yeah, that's
2019. It's a long time from now.
A year from now.
It's almost a year from now. So all these issues we talk about right now, we got to solve it, because otherwise, if we don't solve it now, a Republican will not be winning.
Right.
Maybe not this district, but we're going to lose the House. We could lose the Senate, and then what? Then we have to really compromise and all sorts of stuff.
You bring up a really good point, because for you as a candidate, you kind of have to focus on the short term, because that's something that you have to address immediately, and kind of hold the long term in your back pocket, because there's really not a whole lot. Number one, you can do about it right now, but number two, by the time you get there, the problem may have already been resolved by itself.
That's right.
So, and going back to something you said a little bit earlier about creating the environment, creating the circumstances for positive change. So let's touch on that, because that's a real good segue into what your vision is for the office. What would you like to see in terms of creating these positive catalysts and environment and changes that we would need to have positive?
We can make it super, super simple.
Okay.
Let's eliminate the income tax. Let's eliminate the payroll tax.
What?
And let's move right to the consumption tax. Okay. It's called the fair tax. It's been around for a long time. Make it very simple. Let's end the social engineering that we do with our tax code. Right. Let's end the financial engineering we do with the tax code. Let's get the government out of your paycheck. Do you tell your friends how much money you make? No. Do you tell your family? No. No. Do you tell your neighbors? No. But for some reason, we think we should all tell the government. And then we should, I mean, how many people cheat in their taxes? I have no idea. I know I don't. I'm scared of the government. But let's say we just eliminate this, and then you could spend, if you make $1,000 a week, you can spend $1,000 a week. It's your decision. Yeah. Prices will not go up that much at all, because we're eliminating the payroll tax.
Are we talking about just individuals or corporations as well?
Well, it's open for discussion.
Okay.
That's open for negotiation. Everything's a negotiation, right? What should the rate be? Well, we have to figure that out. But it's going to be a lot better if you keep your entire paycheck.
Okay.
That will ultimately create the ultimate environment for growth. It will be a massive growth. We should see economic expansion like we've never had before because people keep their entire paycheck.
Now, what do you say to those people who say, well, eliminating the income tax will hamper government's ability to respond in times of crisis? It could negatively affect the social safety net. It could impact the way we fund things like the military.
There's an assumption here, right? There's an underlying assumption to every question you ask. And that underlying assumption is the government won't have money anymore.
Right.
And now I'm not advocating to say the government should not have money. They fulfill many, many functions, as you just mentioned, which we need, without a doubt. But with the economic expansion, if you keep all the money, everyone is watching, you keep every dollar that you make, you will spend more. It's just the way it works. Everyone will spend more. Rich people, all the way down the line. The more they spend, the more money gets collected by the government, and the bigger the coffers.
Okay.
It's not a crazy idea. The idea's been out there for a very long time. The states can collect the taxes, eliminate even more federal government function, and then also it's very consistent revenue too, because you can get revenue every single day as opposed to
some consumption. Okay.
Yeah, it's very, very, very simple. That will create the environment.
So you totally eliminate April 15th.
That's right. Why should we have it?
Okay.
Why should we? Really think about it. We've grown up with it. It's been here our entire lives. But how much more can the economy do if the government gets less involved? Okay. That's really the bottom line to it.
Well, that's certainly a real focused and passionate argument in defense of that particular policy. Let's segue a little bit back to Houston, back to CD2. You jumped in the race. I actually remember the day you came in to
sign the paperwork
and sign the wall. How's your campaign been coming along?
Like every campaign, it has it's a roller coaster, right? You have some great, amazing days. You have other days that are not as amazing. Is that a fair way to put it?
It's a fair way. It's a primary, yeah.
It's a primary. I know that if the voters who have heard our message and the voters that we communicated with, if they come out, we stand a very good chance.
Okay.
We don't know if we're going to win or not. No one does. There's certainly some headwinds, but we're positive, and we know that we've inspired a number of people who've come out and heard the message.
What kind of feedback have you gotten?
The first feedback is, "How old are you?" That's
okay.
Okay. Well,
old enough.
Yeah. Well, I'm not 25. For all the people who keep asking if I'm 25, I'm almost 40. So that's the easy part. The other feedback is people love our term limit plan.
Okay.
Term limits have been passed around for many, many years, right? Even last year, this time, Ted Cruz and Ron DeSantis out of Florida, they put forward a term limit plan, but it went nowhere.
Right.
And I always say the reason why ours will pass where others have failed is because we would exempt all the current legislators.
You protect. Give them protection. Give them some cover.
They're not going to vote against their own interests. Let's just be realistic. They never have before. They never will. But 75% of Americans do believe and want term limits. It's one of the ultimate bipartisan ideas.
Okay.
So if we put forward a bill that exempts them, so they can go home to their district and they can say, "Hey, look how great I am. I voted for term limits. Now re-elect me again." They'll do it. At least there's a real fighting chance. And if we want to make fundamental change, not for this generation, but for the next, for our kids.
Right.
Even the one I brought with me. Playing with the crayons in the corner.
He's having a fun time.
He said, "Well, who doesn't at HCRP, right?"
I know, right? That's how we roll.
Everyone bring your kids.
Let me ask you this: you've been involved in the campaign now for a couple of months. You've seen the dynamics. You've met a lot of voters. You've been to a ton of events. What's been your main takeaway so far? What's been the one thing that's really started to come up in your mind as like being the best way to describe the process?
The overall process of what it's like to be a candidate, meaning?
Whatever comes into your mind in terms of being involved.
Sure. I think the first month was very stressful. Trying to get, you have a giant checklist of things to do, right? It's 20, 30 pages long, it feels like. Until you can get all those things to form that base, to build off of, because you need that base to stand off of, then put your platform forward, until you get it. Excuse me. Until you get that part done, it's very stressful. But then once you get your groove, and then once you kind of feel comfortable, it's a lot of fun. And you start to wonder, why didn't I do this years ago? Right? And once you get over that big initial hump. So now every day I feel like it's a blessing. I go out there, I get to meet people 8 days a week. I have speaking engagements all the time. I think it's the greatest thing to get your idea out there, inspire other people, and hopefully no matter who wins, hopefully it's me, but it's not me, at least maybe my ideas will go to the forefront and something can happen.
Now you mentioned that you're feeling inspired. Who inspires you? Who? I mean, when you were a kid, we all have heroes. And I mean, you being involved in politics, you're always going to have those political heroes. Who's been your inspiration?
Past or present?
Both.
All right. Well, you're going to laugh at me because you're going to think I'm contrived and making this up. And
you're
I was
a politician.
I was at a Meet the Candidate breakfast, and I was asked this question: who was your hero growing up? And I thought, you're all just going to make fun of me if I say it. But the true answer, the real answer, and my wife is, if she's watching, she's going to laugh, but it's George Washington. All right?
Okay.
And so
I have him on my wall in my office.
When I was younger, I used to read tons of biographies on him. My parents used to take me to battlefields, Revolutionary War battlefields like Battle of Yorktown, Saratoga.
Wow.
And I found the story of the Revolution to be fascinating. I mean, up against all odds, leading essentially a ragtag group of people, and then taking the presidency. And his story, I mean, he had so many ups and downs in his life.
Yeah.
I mean, he was nearly bankrupt over and over and over again. I mean, when he had to, when he had to take the inauguration from his house in Virginia, he had to go, from Virginia to Manhattan to be sworn in. He couldn't afford to get up there. He had to borrow money from a major in the army that he created. It wasn't even a loan. It wasn't even, I mean, think about it today. Today would be, I think Trump spent $100 million on the inauguration committee. It came out the other day. Whatever that number was. I think it was over $100 million. But Washington had to borrow money for essentially cab fare, right? The carriage fare to get from his house in Mount Vernon in Virginia up to Manhattan.
Wow.
So he's an interesting guy. You know, his life was full of ups and downs, and he achieved an awful lot. Okay. So he's an inspiration and a childhood hero. So it wasn't too contrived, right?
No. I mean, I have Washington on my wall here in the office, and he's right next to Winston Churchill and Dick Cheney. But that's my hero. We're not here to talk about me. Okay, so that's your hero of the past. Do you have any inspiration, any examples that you look at to now?
There's somebody who I like a lot, and I'm sad that he's leaving Congress soon. Trey Gowdy out of South Carolina.
He is awesome.
He is
a boss.
He's so articulate.
Yeah.
He's so driven, and he gets his point across so well. And I like that he stands for. My little guy's wearing a Superman T-shirt, so I'll say it: truth, justice, and the American way. That's Superman, right? Isn't that?
That's Trey Gowdy.
That's
about Trey Gowdy.
Yeah, Trey Gowdy, Superman, whatever. So I like the guy a lot. I'm sad. I was hoping I could be his colleague going forward. Yeah, but yeah, I'm sure maybe he'll be in the federal judiciary somewhere, appointed judge.
See him on the Supreme Court. Wouldn't that be awesome?
No argument here.
That'd be awesome. Okay, maybe that's why he's retiring, because he secretly knows that Donald Trump is going to appoint him to the Supreme Court when Ruth Bader Ginsburg kicks a bucket or something. Knock on wood? No, this is great. I wouldn't do that. Anyway. Good. I think having Washington as a role model is something that every American kid growing up should believe in. I think there's nothing negative about admiring George Washington. I mean, he's the father of the nation. His passion, his abilities, his courage, his resourcefulness, his leadership, all those are things to be admired. And it's sad that we are now at a time where there's actual debate about whether or not Washington should continue to be admired. And there are some schools of thought, in fact, there are some teachers who view him as someone not to be admired at all. And it's refreshing to see someone who still upholds him.
Can you imagine what the new level of principle must be if we say, okay, Washington, Jefferson, we must take down all statues, all pictures, take Washington off the currency.
Yeah.
Who's left? What's the bottom line of what's called morality of their lives that we could choose to celebrate? I would wonder for what percentage of the people who say take down the Washington statues say we should put up an Obama statue instead. Is it more than 50%? Is it less? I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if the answer is more than 50%. I mean, I believe Trump said it earlier, if we start taking down every Confederate statue, every type of
naming all the schools and
everything, what's next, right? What's next?
It's a good point.
And as we already saw, there were people in Springfield, Illinois, birthplace of Lincoln, that said we should take down all the Lincoln things because he didn't do enough, or this, or that, or this. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's sad that we've gotten to this point. Tell me a little bit about CD2. I go up to Kingwood a lot. I go to CD2 frequently. I drive through there when I'm on my way up north.
Well, it's everywhere.
I don't.
It's all around.
Well, yeah.
As we say here, it's to our north, our south, our east, and our west.
It's an interestingly configured district.
It's an artistic interpretation of what a district should look like.
Tell me a little bit about it. What do you see in CD2? What does CD2 offer? What does CD2 best represent? When you go to Congress, when people say, congressman from CD2, what is it? What is it that you're representing?
Well, you're looking at a mixture of urban and suburban.
Okay.
It's not very rural, any part of the district. You're looking at many people who work in the oil and gas industry, many people in the healthcare industry, many people in the academics, whether in the Rice area or people who work for U of H, live in the district. We have, excuse me again, we have a little bit of everything within the district. And the good news is I don't look at anybody as a segment. This is our urban area. Therefore, you have urban issues and urban thoughts, and you only care about XYZ issues. I don't think so at all. I never segment based upon race, or gender, or religion, or anything of that nature. I'm looking at everything in the big picture. What is good for America? What is good for Texas? What is good for Houston?
Right.
I don't ever want to look at it and say, well, this is good for this cross-section of people. There's a lot we could do for healthcare. It's not going to benefit the people who work in healthcare. It's going to benefit everybody. Mm-hmm. We all know the healthcare system, it's a mess, right? It's a mess.
Badly mismanaged and badly overregulated. So yeah.
And we could do so much by doing so little. The last thing we need to do is more government spending. Okay. Instead, we institute basic free market principles. We put in some transparency of cost, and we put in something that exists everywhere else except for healthcare. Of everyone pays the same price per service per provider. So if you want to pay cash to one doctor, and the next guy wants to pay the same doctor for the same procedure in his insurance, it's the same price. Okay. It's no different if you went to the movie theater and you said, I want to go watch, we're talking Superman, I want to go watch the new Superman movie, if there is one. And you go up there and you say, okay, $10. You pay him $10. And the person behind you gets charged $15. Well, it's because they have a different insurance plan.
Yeah.
What is that? It's the same movie. in the same movie theater, but only healthcare works this way. Any other business, like a movie theater or a restaurant, it would be illegal. So we can change these little things. It would cost us absolutely nothing to do it. And we bring back free market principles. With free market, what happens? Prices go down, quality goes up. That's what we're missing.
You'd be able to do this because you're going to deploy the nuclear option for all legislation. How do you respond to people who say that's just going to be a complete upending of the traditions that have been held in the House and to create an environment of deliberation and compromise and conversation, and you're going to eliminate all that? You're just going to run roughshod over it.
I think that questioning is just a lot of nonsense. So if you need 50 votes because the vice president, who's the president of the Senate, can make a deciding vote, if you're 50-50 split, why is it that there's no longer deliberation then? Why is it there's no longer compromise? Why is it that there's no longer relationship building and the give and take? That's nonsense. Okay. It happens in the House. Are we saying in the House it doesn't work that way? Of course it could, and it should.
So you're saying the Senate critters are using the rules as a crutch?
Oh, of course it is.
To limit legislation.
Of course it is. And frankly, if this 60-vote rule started with the Constitution, I would never say change it. I'd say that's the way it was intended. We're going to leave it, and that's it.
But the rule of the Senate, it's not in the Constitution at all.
It's not. It's a bunch of nonsense. It was created after the Civil War by the Democrats, coincidentally, or ironically, depends on your point of view, to prevent funds for freed slaves and Reconstruction.
Interesting.
That's the history of it.
So Democrats who want to keep that 60-vote rule are basically being racists because they want to uphold a racist rule.
Well, I don't know if I want to go that far. I'm not going to go that far.
It's not just
that's how I want to use those words. I would say the history of it is extraordinarily racist, and it's been there for 150 years. It sounds like an important phone call.
Can you decline that call?
It's President Trump.
Tell President Trump we'll call him back later.
Okay. I think President Trump was calling to see if he wanted to endorse me, but we'll take the phone call later.
Yeah, we'll have to give him a call back.
He's not busy.
He'll be fine. He's not doing anything right now.
He's not occupied.
He's just sitting there.
But to complete the thought about it, it's not a rule that has been with us since our nation founding.
Right.
It's a rule that was created, and it can be uncreated. And if we as a party want to get things done, we need to move forward. And we shouldn't be intimidated by Chuck Schumer. They're the minority. We should put forward an agenda. We were given a mandate.
Okay.
The American people spoke. Let's execute the mandate. It's painful. It's painful to sit here and watch. That's one of the reasons I'm running, because I don't like the way things are run.
I think it's a very valid point, because what we have seen thus far since January 20th, 2017 is Republicans have control of the Congress, Republicans have control of the Senate, Republicans have control of the White House, and yet very little of substance has emerged from that. Now, President Trump has been able to sign off on overturning certain regulations. Congress miraculously was able to get the tax reform bill through, but they have failed on subsequent occasions to overturn Obamacare and work on immigration legislation as well. So Congress is stymied and basically paralyzed by the rules they've imposed on themselves, which limit the options in terms of finding solutions. So it's refreshing to see that somebody's actually proposing a way to break through that logjam.
Instead of that, all those parliamentary tricks of putting it through a funding bill, because now we can vote on it because it's about this instead of that. No, this is a bunch of crap.
Now, how much help do you think you'd get pushing that through?
Which Senate? To change the rules?
Yeah.
It all rests on one guy, as far as I know, Mitch McConnell. I mean, I know President Trump has been very vocal about it.
Yeah.
He said it on Twitter, he says it on TV. He says, Mitch, change the rules. But Mitch is Senator McConnell. Don't want to be too familiar. Senator McConnell he's He's known as a parliamentarian.
He upholds the principles and traditions of the Senate.
That's his thing. He's known for that. That's his reputation. I wish I can get 10 minutes to talk to him about it. You know, twist his arm a little bit. I don't know if I have any influence, but I like to try. I'm very afraid there will be a blue wave. We'll lose the Senate. We'll lose the House because we didn't get enough accomplished. It's hard to go back and say to voters, as a party on a macro level, vote for us again. We got one thing done.
You don't think the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is going to be enough?
I hope, but I don't want to rest on it.
Okay.
It's February.
What do you think? What one more piece of legislation do you think they would need to actually get done to be able to hold up as another feather in their cap?
It's got to be a big one. Well, I'm biased. I want to eliminate the income tax and change all that. Okay. How about some term limits? You put term limits in?
Right now, they're kind of stuck on immigration, and there's thought
let's fix immigration.
Do that again? Do you think?
If we built the wall,
right?
If we ended chain migration, and that third big point, we instituted a merit-based system, point system. I mean, I used to live in Australia. I went through the point system.
Right.
I had to show my degrees. I had to show what I did for a living. I had to prove all this information I wasn't a permanent resident. I had a visa. I lived there for a few years.
Okay.
I thought their system had a lot of merits to it. It's not perfect. No one's saying it's perfect. But we can at least take a system similar to what they have and look at what are the needs that we have in America. What do we need to import more of?
Right.
What are we missing, or what do we have too much of? And what do we need to make sure we already do have that we need to maintain? Whatever those numbers are, it needs a very detailed study.
Okay.
And then I'll support it.
What about E-Verify? What do you think?
I like E-Verify. One of my friends and fellow candidate in this race, he talks about it a lot. And he has a good example, and I'll just borrow from him. And he says that his firm, he has a bigger firm. We have a small firm with just a bunch of partners. But he likes to know who is working for him.
Okay.
And he says, hey, it's good business practice. I like it. I want to make sure E-Verify works. I know I've met a lot of different CEOs, business owners who complain all the time, it's a broken IT, it's not consistent, it takes too long. I want to see the system actually work.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the problem with E-Verify is that it uses the federal government to verify the information, but the problem is that it's being run by the federal government. I think if it was outsourced, Newt Gingrich had a really good idea a couple of years ago about having E-Verify run by credit agencies, and because they have much more extensive information. But then that fell apart because like they're getting hacked, and
I can tell you from personal experience, I trust those credit agencies no more than 2 feet.
Yeah,
I think first off, they can't keep your data safe.
Yeah,
9 out of 10 Americans have bad data on there. I wish there was a more foolproof system. I wish there was.
We don't have a foolproof. It's either the federal government or somebody in the private sector, and the private sector has a risk of really getting hacked and losing some of that information.
And same with the federal government.
Yeah.
What's the old saying? I'm from the federal government, and I'm here to help. Yeah. Don't hold it against me.
It's one of those things that we're going to have to figure out a solution for long term.
Yep.
Okay, so Justin, talk to me a little bit about before we wrap up. Let's talk about your the ways people can reach you and see you. What events you have coming up this weekend?
That is the best question I've had all day. Thank you.
Wow.
Just teasing. All right. Follow us on Twitter.
That's the entire interview.
We're on Twitter. We're on Twitter like crazy. It's at Lurie for Houston. And our website is Lurie for Congress. And you can find us on Facebook, Justin Lurie for Congress. It's Lurie, Lurie for Congress. You know, I don't remember my events coming up because, frankly, there's 5 a day every day, and all you do is look in your phone and figure out what time I need to leave by for traffic.
Are you doing anything today for Chinese New Year, which just began today?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Ask me in 10 minutes after I check my phone. Probably.
GOP has an event that we're participating in at the Chinese Community Center on Saturday. I know CD2 has an extensive reach into a lot of those communities. Have you had what's been the most positive interaction you've had with those communities so far? I know that the CD2 has some areas where it overlaps into areas that are densely populated with Koreans and Vietnamese and people from South Asia, India, and Pakistan and Singapore. Have you had some good meetings with?
I've whenever I go to that part of town, I like to practice my Mandarin. And then every time I practice my Mandarin, people always ask me, "What language am I speaking in?" And then it's the ultimate deflating. It's like the first time I went to Shanghai for business, and I try to tell the cab driver where I was going, and he thought I was speaking in Russian. So that was deflating. But it is a lot of fun to reach out to that part of town and to spend some time there, and because they have a bit of a different perspective.
Yeah.
There were so many people who left, let's just call it the tyranny of government, and they came to America because they believe in individual freedoms, and they believe in limited government, and they know that they can thrive and succeed in our capitalistic society. So it's very important for them to make sure that we elect people who understand where they came from, understand what the plight is and how they risked everything. For some people, of course, to come here. And they want to make sure that those ideals are upheld and that we don't get that slow creep, let's call it the creep of liberalism. Leftism. That really kind of squashes the independence of each person.
Yeah, I've actually spoken with a lot of people who came from some of those countries, and they say almost universally, I left my home country to avoid what I'm seeing happen here. So it's clear that we need people in Washington who are going to go and be the warrior for freedom and liberty and conservatism that we need.
I think it's about people who have traveled. I see. I was contagious for you.
Yeah,
I got you.
back and forth today.
It's about people who have not just traveled outside the country and around the world, for whether it's for fun or for business, but the people who have lived there, spent years overseas, understand a different perspective. And that's a good way to appreciate what we have here in America. Or even trying to get a business deal done in Beijing.
Yeah.
If you understand, and that's really greatly improved over the last several years. But I tried to do deals in Vietnam, which is also greatly improving, but it's still a largely communist structure there.
Sure.
And so we want to make sure that we don't slip into that way. And if Bernie Sanders wins the presidency, what happens? What if we had a ticket of Hillary and Bernie? I mean, where would we be?
It's like a suicide pact.
It was. I think we'd be sitting here now having a conversation. How does Texas secede?
Yeah.
How do we do that? But thankfully that's President Trump calling on the phone.
Yes, absolutely.
And we can go back and call him.
Justin, Lurie, thank you so much for joining us here.
Vlad, thank you for having me.
Again, as Justin said, you can find his information on his website, Justin Lurie for Congress.
Lurie for Congress. Or JustinLurie.com. All brings you to the same spot. Or at Twitter, Lurie for Houston on Twitter. Or on Facebook is Justin Lurie for Congress. I know that's a lot.
Follow him there and check his calendars. You'll be able to go meet him at whatever event's coming up next. As he said, there's tons of events coming up between now and the end of the primary on March 6th. Until next time, I'm Vlad Davidiuk here in the HCRP studio. We'll see you.
Thank you.